First watchers, something that I could have never predicted on my 2022 bingo card happened to me last month. Hi, my name is Mina, and I've been a Bridgerton stan for approximately 3 weeks now. I'm not joking, I even went to the Bridgerton fan event called the Queen's Ball last weekend, and I got this dress made by my friend Emma Collins, who is a dressmaker, and I highly recommend getting something custom made by her if you can, because she just does immaculate work, as you can tell. My inspiration for this dress was Keira Knightley's Pride and Prejudice dress, and I know that dress is not historically accurate in the slightest, but I just love that dress so much. And I was like, if I'm going to go to a Bridgerton ball, I'm gonna wear whatever I want because no one cares about historical accuracy anyway. And also, I just don't really like Regency dresses to begin with. I think that the Empire line that they do, which kind of comes up to like literally here, is a little unflattering for my body type. So yeah, I opted for a Joe Wright lower waist redux. This video is sponsored by Wild. I've recently made the switch to Wild's natural deodorant because I'm always looking for new ways to minimize my carbon footprint and become more sustainable. This is how it works. Every set comes with a reusable aluminum case and deodorant refills that you just pop into your case. Each refill lasts over 2 months, and its case is made of bamboo pulp, which is 100% recyclable and home compostable. As you can see, I chose a lavender case, and the scent is jasmine and mandarin blossom, which has a nice floral smell that isn't too overpowering. But Wild currently offers 7 signature scents and 5 different case colors, not including seasonal and limited edition options, so you have plenty to choose from. I also really love the creamy texture and how the product slides onto your skin without any weird sticky residue. If you need more testimonials, Wild has over 7,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, averaging at 4.7 stars, rating excellent overall. You can use my code MINA25 to get 25% off all Wild products. Listen, I know what you're thinking, and no, I do not regret making my anti-Bridgerton video last year because season 1 was bad. Season 1 was a hate watch. I can still say that as a reformed Bridgerton fan. Season 1 was bad. Daphne and Simon had little to no chemistry, the pacing was off, the explanation for their post-racial society was very weird, and I will not forget how Daphne's assault on Simon was just largely brushed off with no real consequences. But season 2, where do I begin? So for anyone who needs the recap, season 2 centers Anthony Bridgerton. The way that the Bridgerton series is formatted takes after Julia Quinn's Bridgerton books, in which every book centers around a different member of the Bridgerton family. So last season's main character, Daphne Bridgerton, takes a back seat and her husband Simon is nowhere to be seen. And because of how the series was set up, I don't even think their screen time was missed. After Daphne and Simon get married, they move out to Simon's estate, so they're not even based in like London anymore, so it makes sense that they wouldn't really show up. Anthony also gets a major character reboot, which I thought was hilarious because he's virtually a totally different character than who he was in season 1. I just feel like the writers looked at what they did and they were like, no, this is not gonna work. His personality in season 1 was very aloof, very playboy, and in this season, he's extremely serious and responsible, going on and on about how he's such a gentleman.
I am a gentleman. I'm a gentleman. I am a gentleman. I'm a gentleman.
Which, you know, I'm a fan of the Anthony character reboot because I found his character in season 1 very insufferable. And for this season, they really played into Austen fan sensibilities towards a repressed man who's actually very gentle on the inside. Mr. Darcy. And you know, I do think it like could make sense the way that his character has developed because maybe he just had a moment of crisis, a moment of realization after his lover left him in season 1 and after Daphne gets married. Maybe he's like starting to think, oh, I need to get my shit together. His love interest is Kate Sharma, a new character. Kate is Indian and the oldest of the family. Her father died, so she lives with her stepmom Mary and half-sister Edwina. So the deal with Mary is that she was cut off from her noble parents, the Sheffields, years ago when she ran off to India with a man below her class. But unbeknownst to Mary and Edwina, Kate has written to the Sheffields, and they were in agreement that if Edwina finds a gentlemanly match in London, they will pay the dowry and give the family back their inheritances. This is probably the plotline that I had the most difficulty digesting because it just didn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why Kate wasn't transparent about the deal with the Sheffields with her mom and sister, because I don't think it would change anything. Edwina was still set on marrying a gentleman in London, and she still had the option to choose whoever it was. I don't think it really would mean anything for her to know this arrangement was happening. But anyways, Edwina is pronounced the diamond of the season, and Antony pre-decides that he's going to marry whoever the diamond is, because surely a diamond would make a dependable, good wife. But he and Kate fall in love with each other after he's already proposed to Edwina, and the two of them repress those feelings in lieu of being responsible eldest siblings. But in the end, Edwina chooses to call off the wedding because she finally realizes what's been happening, and she has her moment of empowerment where she's like, Kate, I'm old enough to decide what I want for my life. You can't just tell me what to do.
Today, you have lost your power. Well, I have made up my own mind. And that is victory enough for me.
And because it's Bridgerton, the scandal of this canceled wedding that the queen literally endorses dies down within a week, and Kate and Antony go off to live their happily ever after. So the biggest change that I noticed this season from season 1 is that Kate and Antony have a fiery chemistry. For season 1, I feel like they just casted Regé-Jean and Phoebe, who played Simon and Daphne respectively, because both of them are good-looking actors, and yeah, that's it. They're just very good looking. But Simone and Jonathan, who play Kate and Antony respectively, they're not just good looking, they also have this magnetism on screen. I cannot emphasize enough how the energy between the two leads is essential for a good rom-com. Even if you gave me a lame-ass, boring-ass storyline, I would probably still be invested. I would probably still enjoy it if I could see that the characters are realistically pining for each other. I also don't know if I'm just not a fan of Julia Quinn's story crafting, but I know that for season 2, the show writers actually made a lot of changes to the plot, which I ended up liking. The most notable is that originally during the bee scene, Antony is supposed to try to suck the venom out of Kate's boob after she's stung. The two are then caught, and similarly to Daphne and Simon, they're forced to marry on the spot. I'm really glad that they did away with this forced to marry plotline, because they essentially already did that in season 1, and it would just feel kind of redundant if they did it again for season 2. The show writers also added in the engagement between Edwina and the Viscount, which didn't happen in the books. Look, I normally hate love triangles, and I'd be the first to say it. I don't really care. I was never in that whole Team Jacob, Team Edward, Twilight thing, because I just don't care about love triangles. The minute you throw in another person, I'm checked out. But in saying that, I actually really liked this new addition in season 2 to the plot, because I genuinely was surprised when Antony proposed to Edwina. I was shocked, and because I was shocked, I was more invested in what was happening. And also I just couldn't fathom how Kate and Antony would get together with Edwina in the mix, because she's such a great character, and Kate obviously feels so much for her sister. So I was just on the edge of my seat because I just didn't know what was going to happen. Another thing about season 2 is that it was way less colorblind. What I mean by that is in season 1, yes, they did give this weird explanation for why Bridgerton is now in this post-racial era.
We were two separate societies, divided by color, until a king fell in love with one of us. Love, your grace, conquers all.
But for the most part, there isn't really any indication of any other culture outside this one British culture. So I liked that for the Sharmas, they comment on the fact that the family's Indian multiple times, and we actually get to see how that Indian culture translates into the Bridgerton world. For example, the day before Edwina's wedding, she and her family do a ritual called haldi, which incorporates the use of turmeric to protect and ward off spirits. In the books, the Sharmas are actually a white family called the Sheffields. But in an interview with Town & Country, executive producer Shonda Rhimes explained, finding some South Asian women with darker skin and making sure that they were represented on screen authentically and truthfully feels like something that we haven't seen nearly enough of. Costume designer Sophie Canal told the Zoe Report, the jewel-toned palettes of Kate's outfits represent shades from Indian culture. I've also used lots of Indian silks in the cut of the Sharma family's costumes for pashminas in their sleeve shapes, and I used gold trims. I was inspired by Indian fashion and the culture's jewelry. Therefore, the accessories for both the Sharma daughters and their mother Mary stem from Indian designs such as intricate beadwork and the use of rose gold as a base of their jewelry. And speaking of their jewelry, I also saw this tweet the other day. Anthony's dad's ring not coming off Kate's finger versus Kate's mom's bangles interrupting an entire wedding. The situation was so dire, the souls of their deceased parents had to join forces from the afterlife to force these idiots together. So true, Queen. The Sharmas also wear Paisley printed garments, also known as bote. Bote translates to flower bud or a spray of leaves, and is thought to have derived from the fusion of floral motifs with a cypress tree, the Zoroastrian symbol of eternity. The textile actually originated in Persia over 2,000 years ago, but the term Paisley comes from the Scottish town Paisley, which was the biggest producer of Indian-style shawls in Great Britain. You see, in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Indian textiles were considered a major luxury in the British Empire. Author Elizabeth Gaskell actually refers to the cashmere shawl in her book North and South. She portrays these Indian garments as highly desired items for the English bourgeois trousseau, noting their spicy Eastern smell, soft feel, and brilliant color. So yes, these British reproductions of the cashmere shawl were considered to be cultural appropriation, and if you ask me, they were shitty reproductions because cashmere shawls, the way that they were produced in India, they were produced by very high-skilled artisans, whereas in Europe, they were produced in stuffy factories by child laborers. But back to Bridgerton. Once again, I don't know why the costume team forces the actresses to still wear what sounds like really tight corsets.
Tighter!
When Regency stays are known for being on the more flexible side, I have a pair myself, and I can say that unless I'm purposely tight lacing, I can breathe and move around pretty freely. But Simone Ashley told Glamour magazine, I realized when you wear the corset, you just don't eat. It changes your body. I had a smaller waist very momentarily. Then the minute you stop wearing it, you're just back to how your body is. I had a lot of pain with the corset too. I think I tore my shoulder at one point.
Why is her corset cinching her waist?
When the Regency stays do not even go to your waist, and then also the dresses that she wears do not cinch at the waist either. I think the actress who plays Lady Featherington did complain about her corsets, but that makes a little bit more sense because her dresses were clearly like cinched at the waist for comedic effect. But for Simone Ashley, like she's wearing the very tubular Regency gown, so it just doesn't make any sense why they would put her in these garments. And if it's like tearing at her shoulder or anything, it means the corset is either cheaply made or it's not fitted to her body properly. Which is even more confusing because Bridgerton has a huge costume budget, so there's really no excuse for these undergarments to not fit these actresses properly. And I'm overall kind of annoyed by it because one, you're putting these actresses in pain for literally no reason, and two, all these interviews that they do afterwards kind of just lend to this myth that corsets were these very restrictive, like oppressive garments, when we all know that they were not in actuality.
Wait a minute, I'll hold on to the post. Now, pull!
So I'm not gonna roast the costumes for this video because I did that already for my last video and they're pretty much the same stylistically. Like, am I still confused by Lady Featherington's pentagonal neckline? Yes. Do I think some of the dresses fit weird? Yes, but I do appreciate that there's at least no more sensationalized corset lacing scenes. So let's just take a quick look at the Sharmas because they're the newest additions to the court. I like how Kate wears heavy taffetas, which gives the indication that she's very rigid and mature beyond her years, due to the responsibilities she's taking up as eldest sister. She also wears stronger colors than Edwina, who dresses in muted pinks and peaches. This is no doubt to show the difference in personalities between the two, with Edwina acting sweeter and more innocent than her sister. Kate and Anthony actually both wear a lot of teal, perhaps to show how they're very similar. I think also having the season set almost entirely in London allowed for more screen time for the other Bridgertons, which I was really happy about. I liked seeing Benedict's nepotism art kid struggles, for instance, including his little opium indulgence.
Decades.
Benedict, dear.
I also liked seeing Antony's flashbacks, which showed us where his trauma stems from. I just wish that we also got flashbacks of Kate and her father. I also really enjoyed all the Featherington drama because Lady Featherington is probably the funniest character on the show.
Mama, might I go play with Eloise?
Lady does not play Penelope.
Forgive me, Mama. Might I go promenade for suitors with Eloise?
Very well then.
I thought Eloise becoming more political was interesting, but I'm kind of annoyed because I thought for sure she would get a queer storyline and they kind of just shut that down with the introduction of Theo. Similarly, in season 1, I kind of felt like they were queer baiting with Benedict and that just ended up going nowhere. I mean, there's 8 kids and one of them has to be the gay cousin, right? And honestly, while I think Nicola Coughlan is a darling, I don't think the writers should have revealed that Penelope was Lady Whistledown so early on because it made me less interested in the whole Lady Whistledown plotline this season. But I still felt really bad for Penelope in the end when she's cast aside by both Eloise and Colin in the span of like 5 seconds. But it was also kind of deserved. So those are my general notes for this season. Once again, I had a lot of fun and I feel like I actually finally understood the hype of Bridgerton. But regardless of how I personally feel about this show, I do think after having some time to think about it that Bridgerton is like a cultural reset.
Hello. Let's celebrate that.
Bridgerton made waves at the end of 2020 because it was one of the first of its kind, a sexy, anachronistic, trashy Jane Austen with a diverse cast. Prior to Bridgerton, we had what Chris Bennion dubbed in The Telegraph the Downton Abbey era. This era signifies the time period between the 1970s up into the 2000s, which was a period of untrammeled success for the British costume drama industry. For instance, we had Brideshead Revisited, BBC's Pride and Prejudice, North and South, Jane Eyre, and so much more. Not only were these costume dramas impeccably loyal to their source materials and mostly visually historically accurate, they were also overwhelmingly slow and white. And it's clear that post-Downton Abbey, viewers have flocked to more liberating, fast-paced, and diverse portrayals of ye olden days, like the great David Copperfield and Dickinson, to name a few. Chris Van Dusen, Bridgerton's writer, told The Independent, "As much as I love a good period piece, I feel like they're considered a little traditional and a little conservative. The tone of Bridgerton is spirited and daring. People talk fast, and there's a banter there, but it's also really, really sexy in a way that you don't always get in a more traditional period show." Personally, I'm a fan of the latter, which I know is probably surprising because I've made a number of videos on YouTube just tearing down period dramas for the lack of historical accuracy. But listen, I adore historical anachronism, truly, like to my core. I love Marie Antoinette. I love Anna Karenina. I really love anything Joe Wright has ever done now that I'm thinking about it. But I digress. I can appreciate a good BBC costume drama. I had like a little phase in high school where I was just like very tuned into the BBC, but I also think that they're kind of suffocating. The dialogue is kind of hard to follow sometimes, and they require just a lot of brain cells to get through. So even when it comes to the more traditional stories, I prefer the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, the 2019 Little Women, the 2020 Emma interpretations, despite all their historical inaccuracies. They're just more enjoyable to me as a viewer. And I think most of the people who are staunchly anti-Bridgerton are just traditionalists, which is totally fine. But I think it's worth setting that boundary between a costume drama and Bridgerton because they are inherently two different genres and they deserve like different critical lenses when we're viewing them. Bridgerton is essentially a bodice ripper in a Netflix format, and if we go into it thinking of it as such, then we wouldn't be so upset by the inaccuracies or by the creative liberties that the writing team takes. For anyone who doesn't know what a bodice ripper is, it's basically a subgenre of romance fiction that came about in the 1970s. It's mostly a pejorative term used by male critics to denigrate a type of book that women love to read, but I've kind of reclaimed it personally as a positive term. Journalist Carol Thurston defined bodice rippers in 1981 as stories with complex storylines and character development, fast-paced action, and frequent sexual activity, at an average of 418 pages in length. These books were actually pretty progressive at the time in the sense that they offered women an escapist world where women could explore freedom, respect, love, and sex. Carol writes, "These are feisty women of integrity, fighting for independence, equality, and respect in a man's world, accepted as individuals, fighters, not ashamed to seek satisfactions of those needs." According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the first print use of the term was in a New York Times book review back in 1979. But most people would say that the first bodice ripper was The Flame in the Flower by Kathleen E. Woodiwiss, which was published in 1972. This was a really momentous publication because most of the books on the market at the time were very chaste. The Flame in the Flower was erotic, highly graphic, and depicted sexual assault multiple times within its 600 pages. So, like the name, bodice rippers are not generally focused on historical accuracy. It's kind of in the name itself. In real life, bodices are very difficult to rip because back in the day they were made with whalebone or steel. And you probably wouldn't want to rip them up anyway because clothes were very expensive. When I'm reading, I wouldn't have the same expectations for a bodice ripper as I would have for like a piece of historical fiction. In saying this, a lot of fans have noted though that this season there's been a lot less sex. We only get one sex scene, which is at the very end. In comparison, back in 2020, Bustle published an article ranking the show's sex scenes based on how much of Simon's ass we could see. For hardcore Bridgerton fans, this lack of sex goes against the whole ethos of the show, which is balancing the prude social scriptures and raunch behind closed doors. As the saying goes, lady in the streets, freak in the sheets, business in the front, party in the back. For people like me, though, who are more into the romance, slow burn aspects of traditional period dramas, I was totally fine with this because I was actually more thrilled by the flash of leg than by anyone's butt.
Finally, some good fucking food.
So with everything that I've said, I feel like season 2 is actually more of like an in-between in the spectrum of like historical drama and bodice ripper. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in season 3, but I think we can all agree that deeper than the sex scenes, the pull of Bridgerton is that it's a form of escapism that highlights romance in a way that's both realistic to the modern day, as well as charmingly antiquated. And maybe the reason that we're all so drawn to Bridgerton, especially right now, is because there is a deficit in the rom-com industry. There's truly nothing else on the market that fills the void. Nothing else that mirrors the flirtatious banter that Kate and Anthony did in the show. I honestly can't name, I think, any good rom-coms that have come out in the last 10 years, and that is so upsetting. But when I was watching this season, I literally felt myself becoming so insane. Like, it was embarrassing how crazy I was getting over these two fictional characters.
You were the bane of my existence. And the object of all my desires. Night and day, I dream of you.
It just like totally revived this fangirling spirit I had inside me that I just like thought didn't exist anymore once I graduated high school. But no, I just realized that nothing's happened to me internally. It's just that nothing good has come out to trigger this kind of like emotional response from me. So what I'm trying to say is that we definitely need more of this kind of media, especially in these times. It definitely makes me recall, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Sullivan's Travels, which is a pretty old movie. It's from the 1940s. But there's this one scene, basically, okay, let me start from the beginning. The protagonist, I don't even remember the name because I watched this movie so long ago, but the protagonist is a movie director and he's known for making these comedies. And he decides that he wants to make like an actual drama because he's tired of making comedies. And it's like a whole odyssey, but basically in the end, he ends up in this prison. There's like this one day a week that this prison, they go to watch cartoons in a church. And in that moment, when he's like watching the cartoons and he's like laughing and he's had all this like struggle working on this chain gang and everyone in the church is like laughing, he realizes like the remedy, the medicine that comedy provides for people during tough times. And it's like so true. We need rom-coms. They are a cultural necessity. I'm going to end this video with this quote by English novelist Georgette Heyer, who once said of her own Regency romances, I think myself I ought to be shot for writing such nonsense, but it's unquestionably good escapist literature, and I think I should rather like it if I were sitting in an air raid shelter or recovering from flu. Okay, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening to me go on about this. Let me know in the comments what you think about Bridgerton Season 2 and how you think it compares to Bridgerton Season 1. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.